I'm going to start the talk track on top of the presentation, the deck that is included in the Ultimate Zoom Setup Guide. I'm going to walk you through everything I know about supercharging your Zoom pitches with software, but we'll probably start with some other quick tips to make sure that you guys are prepared to do your best Zoom and video conference pitches. Now, it's pretty meta and funny. I'm using the software that I'm going to walk you through to control this right now. So you'll see that I'll be able to transition from deck to camera, and then deck plus camera to make sure that you can see the deck really nice while you can see my face. That's what we're going to walk through at the end of this presentation. But before, I want to get started with an introduction and talk to you a little bit more about some of the initial tips around pitching. So for me, here's some background on why I spent so much time creating content around fundraising. Early on, I was the head of new media products at MLB.com. I then became a venture capitalist at Greycroft, where I was there for about 4 years. I was co-founder and CEO of a venture-backed startup called Tape. We had a small exit there, after which I transitioned to building Adamant Ventures, which is a firm focused on making fundraising as easy and accessible as possible. Through that work, I've become an executive fundraising coach for Silicon Valley Bank and launched my own podcast called Funded, which is like how I built this for the crazy fundraising stories out there. So before we get into some of this, some background, why is this so important? Well, live pitching, as you know, is a very integral part of fundraising, and it's changed over the last years because of COVID. So those first two things, having the business spoon-fed to an investor, as well as giving them an opportunity to test competency and ask for details, those are very important parts of live pitches. But the reason that I've spent time building this guide out to make sure people enhance their live pitches is that there's a third category around the value of a live pitch for an investor, which is an opportunity to read the founder. And reading the founder is, I think, one of the more important components to making a decision to invest at the very earliest stages. And so if we believe that investors are still reading founders even over Zoom, we want to make sure that you all show up in your best capacity and make it as human as possible. So we're going to walk first through some setup tips for Zoom and video conference pitching. And essentially we'll ask the question, what should you have in place before the pitch begins? And the first principle that I always point people to when I give them advice around pitching is optimize for human connection. Try to make sure you do everything you can over Zoom, over video conferencing. That'll make it as close as possible to sitting across the table from her or him. Okay. So first things, internet. I always try to tell people, do your best to create the best internet signal that you can if it's an important pitch, especially. That means asking your partner, your kids, your roommates to not use internet, and especially not to be streaming or hogging up a bunch of bandwidth while you present. Lighting. Lighting is so important. I see this done very poorly time and time again, but try not to be backlit where you're super dark, and sit in a place with great lighting. And if you can't do that, then I highly encourage you to go buy extra lighting, which can be very, very inexpensive, like $15. And we'll get to that in a future slide. Microphones. So I find that the two most common microphones people use, the default laptop microphone and AirPods, are actually not great. So the laptop one, as people move around, sometimes can drop and really not pick up your audio. And AirPods honestly sound quite bad. So I'd highly recommend you check out one of these three options. There are lavalier mics out there. There's the iPhone mic that comes with a nice dangly mic in front of your mouth. And then there's a fairly inexpensive knockoff version of the Yeti, which I'm using right now, that really, really gets the job done in terms of making your audio more fulsome and more consistent. Eye contact. Eye contact can be very hard in a video conference environment. Your presentation is down there. You're looking at the investor on the screen. And so one of my tips is to try to put a photo of somebody that makes you comfortable, a loved one, maybe a funny celebrity like Post Malone, near the camera so that it reminds you to look up and look at the camera as opposed to down at the screen or off to your phone, or looking at the investor on screen as opposed to through the camera. Okay. And then camera quality. Camera quality is really not something that I think is addressed as often as it should be. It turns out your MacBook Pro camera, your laptop camera is probably pretty bad quality, and they're fairly inexpensive and very easy fixes to that problem. So the most straightforward and easiest one is a Logitech 920. It's highly regarded across the industry as like a standard additional webcam that does a really good job of giving you a much better image quality when Zoom conferencing. And it costs about $70. Super easy to install, plugs right in, and props and perches on top of your laptop right over where the webcam usually is. Now, if you want to go really high end, you have two options. One is an $1,100 plus DSLR setup, which I have. That's what I'm using right now. Or, as I found out probably 2 months after I actually spent all the money on this setup, there's an amazing software called Camo that allows you to convert your iPhone into a super high quality webcam that you can control the software for just $40 a year. Whether it's the Logitech, the DSLR, or the Camo app, I highly recommend you spend a little bit of money to enhance your camera to do the best possible job on the image that you're sending over the wire as you're pitching investors. And I just mentioned a bunch of products that you can buy to enhance your Zoom pitches. I've aggregated them all on a site called Kit. So if you want to see this at kit.co/JA, you can find all the products that I reference, even lighting, cameras, etc., and microphones. Super easy to get it there. I don't make any money off of it. It's just a nicely aggregated list of products that I recommend. So I wanted to circle back to Camo just so you have the website, reincubate.com/camo. This is a screenshot straight from their software. Really easy to set up. And although it's only iPhone, sorry, Android users, if you have an iPhone, I'd highly recommend you try this out. You can do everything from apply filters to apply background blurriness, that bokeh effect that I have. It's a really, really great product to enhance your video conferencing. Okay, so that was a lightning fast run through of initial tips and tricks, all to get to this core one that I wanted to start spending time on, which is how to set up OBS. OBS is powerful, free software that is mostly used for gaming and streaming. But we're gonna walk through how you set it up so that you can present like me, where you put my camera here next to the presentation so that people can see the presentation but still make eye contact with you. It's really, really powerful. So I'll go through a couple setup steps and then switch over to showing you my OBS screen so you can see how things get set up. First, go to obsproject.com. That's where you'll download the free software, and it's available on Windows or Mac, which is great. And then the next setup, as you start installing, it's going to send you through this auto configuration wizard. People always have a question here. There are 3 confusing options, but you're not a gaming streamer, at least for these purposes. All you're trying to do is take control of a virtual camera. So choose the third option, the only using the virtual camera option. Okay. Now I'm going to walk you through these setup steps, which are in the deck that you downloaded as well. But for now, I'm going to flip over and show you my OBS screen. So let's do OBS. It's going to be a little bit trippy for you to see my screen there. But the biggest thing to note is that when you're setting up a scene, this scene will be empty. In fact, I'll actually go into an empty demo. Okay, so this is what it'll look like when you start trying to set up a scene. It'll be nice and black, and what we'll do is add video sources to the scene. So you'll hit the plus button down here and choose video capture device. Video capture device I'll call Sony. Oops. Sony 2. And you'll choose the device that is your camera. In this case, mine is the Camlink. Okay. You'll hit OK here. And now you see that I've added a video camera to the scene. So I can drag this around. I can even resize it. I can make it bigger, etc. Okay. The next thing we'll do in this demo is show you how to add a window. And I use window capture for my deck. And window capture is essentially just lists out every single window that is open on your computer. From here, we'll go, mine is a preview, and go into that. And I'll add it. Now, the next thing you'll notice is that the title bar is showing, and we don't want to show that in our presentation. So one of the power moves that I'll teach you is the Option plus dragging the handle command, in which you'll be able to resize and crop out the areas that you don't want showing. And then once I release the option, I can go here and resize. And I think even more important is doing that for my video camera. And I'll show you another power move, which is Command plus up or down. Command plus up or down changes the order of any source within your scene. So I put that to the top. Now I want to make sure that actually I don't waste so much real estate with the sides of me. So I'm going to crop this nice and tight using the Option plus drag feature. Once I've got a good square here, I'll resize it and really take up a nice space so you can see my face next to my deck. Awesome. So those are the setup scenes. The next thing I'll do is kind of drop you back into the deck. And let's go through the next steps and see if there's anything else that we should share. So I showed you how to add the window. I showed you how to add a video capture device. I talked through some power tips around editing and arranging. And lastly, just so you know, there's going to be a Start Virtual Camera button. So you want to make sure you start the virtual camera. Once you've started the virtual camera, it'll show up as a video source within Zoom. And then once you're in Zoom, you'll switch the camera with this little arrow, this little caret button, and go use the OBS virtual camera. Once you're live using OBS, you'll have all these scenes that you've created, and you'll be able to easily toggle between deck plus camera, the deck only, maybe back to the camera. So you want to be talking specifically to the investor. Obviously, I don't recommend you get so fancy like you're a TV show producer, but it is nice to be able to go back and forth easily without fussing with the scene selection, the screenshare selection, asking for permissions, etc., and just being able to go back to the deck only, camera only. Okay. Now, if you appreciated this content, I would love for you to follow up with me afterwards on social, ask me questions there, find me on Twitter, tweet at me, and then subscribe to my newsletter. I spend all my days with founders, helping them problem solve through fundraising challenges. And I bundle some of those insights, some of those real world examples that I see into a newsletter that I release at least once a week on Fridays. It's adamantventures.substack.com. And would love for you to check out the podcast Funded. It's a really great dramatic look at the roller coaster ride of founders as they go fundraising. It's kind of like how I built this, except for the fundraising struggle. I'm at JA, at Adamant Ventures, and at FundedPod. And then on top of that, would love for you to pay it forward. So I spend a lot of time creating free tools and free workshops to help entrepreneurs and founders make it through the fundraising process in a better way. It would just be great if you made a similar offer using your expertise. So have some copy here that you can use, but would love for you to just share your own expertise with the world, offer people some of your time and guidance, because I know that you're an expert in something. Anyways, find me on Twitter, find me on LinkedIn, would love to connect with you there. And until the next presentation, the next workshop, the next guide that I release, we'll see you on the flip side.